Hi, I'm Gemma.
And I'm Sarah Jane.
Welcome to The Conversation at Home, a series of talks designed to help you navigate parenting. One of the most tricky topics for parents at the moment is what to do about their children's screen time, and in particular, smartphones. When should we give them? What apps should they be allowed on? Should I limit their time? So we've created this talk, Parenting in a Digital World for Positive Mental Health. Our hope is to share the research that's out there and offer some guidance so that you feel more confident in making informed choices for you and your family. We're grappling with this with our own children. They are not easy choices to make, and we're not here to judge anyone. We're all trying to do the best we can, but it's easier to do our best if we've got the information to hand and the support of others around us. If you've watched any of our previous talks, you'll know we like to focus first on the reasons behind our advice, and these are all research-led, and then consider strategies for how to implement this advice.
So first, why? Why do we need to talk about children and smartphones? We have a mental health crisis amongst children and young people in the Western world. In his book, Jonathan Haidt names our children and young people the anxious generation. And I know this sounds a bit scary or maybe overwhelming, but it's so important that we ask why this is and think about what we can do to make a difference. So what has our mental health crisis got to do with smartphones? Smartphones are a relatively new piece of technology. The iPhone first arrived in 2007. So this means that the first teens to grow up with a smartphone are only now reaching adulthood. They're known as Gen Z. Therefore, it's only now we can recognise the impact having a smartphone and everything that comes with it, social media, the internet, constant availability in the palm of your hand, has had, and the results are not good. Before smartphones, depression, anxiety and mental health problems amongst young people were considerably lower. Scientists have been able to map the rise in mental health problems with the rise in the number of people getting a smartphone. It's important to say that this increase in mental health concerns is not happening as much to adults. It's specifically children and young people who are affected in this way.
So let's look in more detail. Before smartphones, 5% of boys and 12% of girls experienced major depressive episodes in their teens. After smartphones, by 2022, this had increased to 12% of boys and nearly 30% of girls. That's more than doubled. Self-harm amongst girls has nearly tripled, and suicide rates have doubled amongst 10 to 14-year-olds. In 2019, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health discovered that 12 to 15-year-olds who use social media for over 3 hours were twice as likely to have mental health problems. We could go on and on about the statistics, and if you'd like to know more, you'll find references at the end of this video. The point is, the statistics are grave, and we can't sit around doing nothing about it, or ignore them and carry on, hoping our children won't be affected. We are the generation of parents that need to step up.
So why are smartphones causing a mental health crisis? Before we talk about that, the first thing to say is that smartphones are highly addictive. If we think of any other addictive substance, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, we would never give these to our children, tell them to put them in their pockets, carry them around with them all day, and just get them out now and again to look at. And I know that's an oversimplified analogy, but it's kind of what we're doing when we give our kids a smartphone, and then we get annoyed with them when they end up addicted. The problem with addiction is that it can take over your life. It can get in the way of your relationships. It stops you doing other things. You start to feel as if you can't cope without it. Sound familiar? We will explore addiction more a bit later in part 2. But for now, we want to talk through the 5 key ways that smartphones can be harmful. Firstly, their impact on our sleep. Smartphones impact the quality and quantity of our sleep. Sleep is a significant contributor to good emotional well-being. Less sleep means more of the stress hormone cortisol being produced. In fact, some research has suggested that in cases of poor mental health, altering sleep patterns for teenagers can be 3 times as effective at alleviating depression as medication. Teenagers can get a bad reputation for being lazy, but in fact, teenagers need more sleep than adults or children, around 9 hours a night. Society isn't set up to support the teenage brain and how it needs to function. Melatonin starts to be released much later into the evening, and their circadian rhythm changes. A teenager may therefore naturally want to sleep around midnight till 9, not particularly congruent with the average teen's education. Unfortunately, it's not within our power to shift school timetables, but it's vital that we do all we can to encourage good sleep hygiene to help our teen get quality sleep. And yet, many children and young people are getting less sleep because their digital habits are poor. 81% of people never turn their phone off, even when in bed. Having a phone in a bedroom is just too tempting. You're either up too late watching reels, or the constant social interaction doesn't allow you to switch off. And then the blue light emitted from a phone further inhibits melatonin production. But it's not just at bedtime. Too much phone use during the day has been shown to lead to shorter sleep durations, later wake-ups on weekends, greater daytime tiredness, and lower quality sleep. And in case you've forgotten, poor sleep leads to poor mental health.
Secondly, smartphones encourage distraction and multitasking, which affect our attention spans. We are less attentive and perform less well in tasks when we have our phones with us, because they have such a pull on our attention. So basically, a quick check of a message whilst doing homework means that the homework will be of a lower standard. Or even whilst we're watching TV, our brains will be flicking between the phone and the TV and reducing our ability to focus. Even the simple presence of a phone has the ability to distract us and reduce performance by 20%. Constantly switching our attention, however fleetingly, to our mobile phone is changing our brains and having an impact on cognitive ability and on our ability to enjoy the present moment. Thirdly, children are being exposed to harmful content online at a younger and younger age. In the Ofcom Media Report 2024, 77% of parents were concerned about their child seeing age-inappropriate content online. Simply by giving a child access to Safari or an internet browser, your child is allowed to roam free in a digital city, where of course they can find some great information, but they can also find a lot of incorrect information, dodgy opinions, and disturbing stories and images. Material that comes with an age restriction can be easily bypassed. All they need to do is click a button to lie about their age. As well as the regular internet, we also need to acknowledge the existence of the deep web and the dark web. Little is talked about of the more subversive and dangerous darker side of the internet: radicalisation and terrorism, modern-day slavery and exploitation, drugs and arms dealing. Extreme pornography is far more easily accessible to our teens than we would like to think. However, deep and dark web aside, whilst on a regular browser, children can intentionally and unintentionally access highly sexualised content, as well as content on self-harm and suicide, regardless of how well you think you are supervising them. When one of my children was 8, he was sitting on the beach next to family playing on a game on his dad's phone. That evening, when my husband picked up his phone, he was faced with explicit sexual video content that horrified us both and made us feel sick. In the morning, when we spoke to him about it, we realised that this was just him being inquisitive. And when typing girls' private parts out of intrigue into Google, he received something a lot worse than he was expecting. A child's brain should not and cannot process this kind of content. They don't even need to go looking. Male teens in particular are targeted the moment they join social media in an attempt to lure them into watching pornography. It's not just pornography that's easily accessible. You don't need to look far to find pro-anorexia messages, self-harm methods, and dangerous political and cultural views. And it's not just the content we need to be wary of. There are people out there specifically looking for our children to cause them harm. But even the content that seems harmless, the TikToks, the YouTube reels, the music videos, which in isolation just seem like a bit of fun, if viewed too much, can have an impact on our children's self-esteem and worth, because they encourage consumerism and comparison. Viewing these unachievable, filtered realities is subconsciously drip-feeding our children with the idea that in order to be attractive and valued, they need to have a certain product, look a certain way, or pursue a certain lifestyle.
The fourth key harm is about how smartphones can exacerbate friendship issues. A huge increase in the work we've been doing in schools over the last few years has been teachers asking us to talk about friendship issues that have arisen because of something someone has posted online or the WhatsApp group someone has been excluded from. When children are having relationship issues with friends and classmates, there is no escape. The problem comes home with them and continues through messaging and social media. The impact can feel relentless. Taking the friendship issue online only adds fuel to the fire, and what would have blown over in a day becomes a much bigger issue. We're giving our children phones so that they can stay in touch with their friends, but ironically, they are far better equipped to manage their friendships in the real world without the help of technology. And finally, it's as much about what children aren't doing as what they are. A smartphone-focused life discourages traditional play and interaction. Once, when children were reading, creating, playing outside, or even just allowing themselves to be bored, now they fill these times with phone time. And let's face it, this might make our parenting job easier at times. They're quiet, they're happy, but at what cost? Free play allows the development of crucial social skills such as conflict resolution, but it's also how our children expand their minds, improve their self-worth, nurture their talents, and feel pride in who they are. It's now so easy for our children to get a quick dopamine hit from a smartphone that they are losing out on the benefits of traditional play.
The research is out there and these harms are very real, and we know parents are worried about this. ParentKind's national survey last year identified the top concern as the amount of time their child spends on electronic devices. But it's one thing to be worried about it and another to know what to do. Things aren't going to change unless we as parents do something about it. So what can you do? We have 3 key principles that we believe can make all the difference, that will allow your children some access to digital technology, because let's face it, it's part of our world and there are many benefits, but that can reduce the potential harm. Our 3 principles are: 1, no smartphones for primary aged children. Number 2, no social media until at least 13, and actually we would recommend significantly older. And 3, parental controls until age 16. For each of these 3 principles, we're going to look at why they're important, some of the challenges that might arise, and finally, some practical guidance.
So in this first section, we're going to look at why you should delay giving your child a smartphone whilst they're in primary school. The average age of children using smartphones has dramatically reduced over the past few years. Ofcom research found that 91% of children in the UK own a smartphone by the time they are 11, and 44% by the time they are 9. Even 20% of 3 to 4-year-olds in the UK have their own smartphone. Now, if we think back to those mental health statistics we were looking at earlier, what's worrying is that the younger a child gets a phone, the more likely they are to experience those mental health problems. The results of a huge study of young adults, taken in 2023, explored the correlation between positive well-being and when a smartphone was first acquired. The results showed unequivocally that the younger they got their first smartphone, the worse their mental health is today. Let's not pretend this is easy. We know the pressure is out there. We have primary age children. We feel it every day. But we cannot know what we know about the impact of smartphones on our children's mental health and go ahead and give our child a smartphone in primary school. Please don't think we are judging you here. No doubt there are many of you who have already given your child a smartphone and maybe you feel it's too late to go back. Firstly, it's never too late. There is absolutely nothing wrong with sitting down with your child and saying, I know I gave you a phone. I've recently come across some research that shows it can be really harmful and I've changed my mind. I know that's really hard, but it's my job to put those boundaries in place. Alternatively, you might feel that you don't want to take the phone away. In which case, have a look at our parent control section to consider how you can best protect their mental health while still using a phone.
We know there are some pretty convincing arguments for why your child might need or want a phone in primary school. Perhaps you want them to be able to contact you whilst they're out. Or maybe you have children that don't live with you some or all of the time, and you feel you need a way to keep in contact with them. If you feel really strongly your child needs a phone, you might want to consider what's known as a dumb phone. This one from Nokia, for example. Essentially, it's a phone that can call, text, and play some games, even some that take photos and you can listen to music on, but you can't access the internet. There are lots more desirable options now, like this one, and more are coming to the market in the UK. And I can hear you say, oh, but won't they be bullied? Oh, but how can they listen to their music? Or what about their homework app? So let's address some of these old buts. You might say, my child really likes to play games, and I find it really helpful that they can play their games and have some chill out time on their phone. In our local survey, primary age children said that gaming was actually the main reason they go on their phones. So we can understand there is a demand for this kind of digital access. But we would argue that it doesn't need to be on a phone. A family tablet or a computer can do that job, one that belongs to you, that you have control of and you allow access to when you're happy to. Of course, you need to put on the safety restrictions and limit the time they spend on it, but it's not as portable. You don't carry it around in your pocket, and it discourages unsupervised access. We would suggest insisting they do their gaming in family spaces, not a bedroom. A tablet can also be helpful for accessing those homework apps like TT Rockstars or phonics games, which are inevitably set for primary school children.
If it's music you want your child to access, my daughter is heavily into music, and there aren't actually many good options out there. iPods don't exist anymore. It's hard to access music without internet access. And it's at these times that I inevitably end up giving my daughter my phone to listen to music. However, as mentioned earlier, some dumb phones have this feature, but also a tablet can fulfill this function. So we'll download a playlist at home, for example, and then in the car, my daughter will use the family tablet to listen to it on journeys. And at home, we got her an Alexa, and actually it's been a really nice way to introduce her to digital independence. She's 10, it has parental controls on it, but she's able to listen to music and Audible, as well as set alarms and reminders to facilitate routines for her. And finally, and probably the biggest reason parents feel that they need to give their child a phone is because of the fear that their child will miss out and be socially excluded. We're not going to lie, at present, they will likely be in the minority if they are without a phone in year 6, certainly, and that'll be really hard. But we firmly believe we are on the cusp of a change in attitude and the beginnings of a movement. The research is getting harder to ignore. People are starting to wake up. Politicians are beginning to take action, and there have been several town-wide campaigns encouraging parents to pledge to not give their primary-age child a smartphone. Even Gen Z themselves are starting to express their opinions and acknowledge the negative impact smartphone use in childhood had. That being said, the pressure on parents is strong. We've all had those moments when your child comes home complaining that everyone at school is allowed a phone or this app or to play on this game. We empathise. The need to fit in is a strong social instinct for children. But honestly, your child will not lose out in the long term. Yes, they're probably going to be angry or upset, but we must think of the long game and teach your child that positive well-being is more important than social expectation. And if your child is not going to have a friend because of the kind of phone they do or don't have, then they are not the kind of friends we want for our children anyway. Don't be afraid to be that parent that takes a stand. You can be the influencer. Once 1 or 2 parents hear that you're not giving your child a phone, they realise that they don't have to either. And before you know it, this will become the norm. If you decide not to give your child a smartphone, chat with them about why. It's really important that you hear their point of view and empathise with how they feel. But it's also important to share your concerns and explain your boundaries. It's your job to keep them safe and protect them.
Remember, you are not alone. There are lots of us who do feel the same, and we need the support of each other to help resist the pressures to give in. It's a lot easier to say to your child, we're not giving you a phone, but neither is so-and-so and neither is so-and-so. Please reach out within your communities. Put some messages in your class WhatsApp groups and ask if there are others who are not giving their child a phone yet. Encourage that mutual support and share the links to this talk. There are also various national organisations that you can link up with. We're not pretending this is easy, but our children's mental health is worth the fight and we can turn the tide. If you're local to Stamford, we've started a campaign encouraging parents to sign up to the Stamford Cyberwise campaign we outlined earlier. No smartphones for primary age children, no social media till at least 13, and parental controls until 16. We would love to get you on board with this. We hope we have convinced you about the first part, and if we have, please go on to our website, theconversationstamford.co.uk, and sign up to the Stamford Cyberwise campaign. And follow us on social media so we can keep you updated on the campaign's progress. In part 2, we will be outlining why we are recommending withholding social media and having parental controls in place.